Ian Barkin here, and today is a very special episode. So I want to welcome you to this special episode. I will explain in numbers why it is so special, but, and I will repeat this multiple times as more and more people join the feed, this episode counts on your participation. So anybody who is listening and has tuned into this episode, first and foremost, thank you. And second, this is not going to be easy on you, because you need to share who you are, where you're dialing in from. Still use dial in. I got to come up with a different verb for where you're live streaming in from. And then I want questions. I want you guys to contribute and be part of this discussion. Just as a few of our guests already have. AJ Hanna, who says, great guests for the milestone episode. Totally agree. Jay Ludgrove, who congratulates me, says this is going to be a great episode. It is too soon to tell. This could be an absolute dumpster fire, Jay, but thank you for joining said dumpster fire to great success. Sarah Grace McCandless, thank you for joining in. Gloria, hello, and Matt Sullivan. So keep them coming. I want to hear who's out there, who's listening, who's tuning in. And what's so exciting too is I have two very special guests joining me on this show, who I want to introduce now, bring on, and then we're going to sort of banter and bandy about, and I'm going to meander somewhat unstructured and unscriptedly, and we'll see where it takes us. So before I go any further, want to welcome my two guests, Jim Raymer and Shay Washington, to OneTAKE. Jim and Shay, hello.
Hi.
Hello. How are you guys doing?
Good.
I'm doing great.
Good. So Jim is calling in from Florida, and Shay is joining us from Boston. We will have them explain that more in a moment. But then let's get on with why this is so special. A few different reasons. One, I'm standing. This is a standing show, which is going to wreak havoc on the camera, and it's going to focus and lose focus on me constantly. And the light is going to go crazy and drive poor Jim crazy as I go from like too bright to too yellow to whatever. So that's one. Two, today is a special day for a lot of different reasons. One, it's Dewey Decimal System Day. It's Dewey Decimal System Day. You can find this information on the internet just to prove that I did that Googling. And in addition to being Dewey Decimal System Day, it's also Nobel Prize Day. So congratulations out there to all my friends who have Nobel Prizes. Good for you. It is your day. It's your day. You got a day and the Nobel Prize. It's also National Lager Day, the beer. And I sincerely considered a joke in which I was holding beer while doing the show, but I do work for an employer, and thought that was well, funny. Probably something that would cause a lot of paperwork for HR. So, but it is National Lager Day. Two more serious and important days that it is. First and foremost, it's Human Rights Day. And if you do follow SYKES in our LinkedIn page, you'll see a post in a really touching and moving video to commemorate it. So it is Human Rights Day, and to everyone out there, I don't know what you wish, but you wish a continued commitment and emphasis on human rights globally. It is also the first night of Hanukkah. So for all of those out there who celebrate, a happy Hanukkah to you. It is it's the beginning of 8 days of trying to keep your kids happy as they wander around expecting gifts on every one of those days. And this right here that you are listening into and are part of is the 50th episode of OneTAKE. The 50th episode of OneTAKE, which is amazing. It's a shock that we've been on air this long, that anyone's let us do this experiment for as long as we have. But a huge team has made it possible, including Jim and Shay. And Jim and Shay, that's why you were on this show, to save me from myself and to chat. So let's start there. Ladies first, Shay, can you please give our audience an introduction to you and who you are, what you do on the show?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I go by the name of Shay Washington. I am the wonderful show OneTAKE. And what I do is I try to make Ian be the best that he can be. And by doing that, we work with a really great team. We have a copy team, we have distro, and we work with this great company called GeoPro UK, who helps us make these great promotional assets for you guys to see the show and enjoy it. So that's pretty much what I do. I help make Ian look good.
That is probably one of the harder jobs on the planet, and Shay does a spectacular job of it. So thank you, Shay. And Jim, to follow on in the theme of trying to make me presentable and keep me coherent and keep me live and online. What's your day job?
This is my day job. I'm the behind the scenes guy. I make sure that Ian starts at least within the 10-minute window that we're allotted. I get all of our deliverables set up. I get the shows built, and yeah, try to make Ian look good too.
Yeah. So for all those out there, we should probably put like home addresses in the feed so that you guys can send presents and wine or beer to Jim and Shay for having to do all that work to make me look good. But no, that they are an invaluable part of the OneTAKE team, have been all along, and are I'm by their side, and have been for the last 50 episodes, and will be for the next 5,050 episodes. Almost none of which we have scheduled. So, so wanted to take us through a bit of this is sort of a meta show. This is a show about a show, but far less good than Seinfeld. And wanted to walk through sort of the history and the brainstorm and the sort of the catalyst for what we were doing. Just because I think there's actually there is a whole genre of content out there now just about how to do things like this. It's sort of the self-help, sales, build your story, narrative, content, brand class of content. And we've had some guests on the show who major in that. And OneTAKE was very much that. It was an experiment that we have played with since the very beginning, and actually before. So I guess with that, I'll start with the prehistory, just to give people some context. For those who know a little bit about me, I'm one of the co-founders of Symphony Ventures. That tassel always hangs right in the way. But Symphony Ventures was a RPA consultancy boutique, and we had we were lean. We were a startup. We had finite resources and needed to build our brand and our position in a hot new market, which was robotic process automation. And so I was always intrigued and playing with social channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Were probably the primary three. I couldn't figure out what to do with things like Instagram and Pinterest and others. Still can't. But needed to build our brand, and so started to put videos out on those channels just about what we were doing. And then I guess somewhere along the line was lucky enough to stumble into a producer for content at LinkedIn and LinkedIn Learning, which is just an awesome family of creatives and producers, and was able to create some courses on LinkedIn Learning. And all that to say, then LinkedIn rolls out this live stream capability that was somewhat like Facebook and some others, but harder to use, which we will discuss in a second, because poor Jim has been at the brunt of much of the experimentation. But all of a sudden, we had this tool in our hands, and we didn't necessarily know what to do with it, but we knew that we could go live over LinkedIn. And so we started to play with the concept, and OneTAKE really was born from there. I'll stop for a moment and go back to the technical. Actually, you know what? I'll stop for a moment and go back even further, because we played with the content. We wanted to talk to experts. I was primarily talking about robots all the time. Robots. I used to have a ton more of these things in my office everywhere. I weaned down to just a few. I'm on a 12-step program to reduce my life of robot toys and other things. But we wanted to open our aperture and talk about more than just automation of work. And part of the catalyst for that was we sold Symphony to an enterprise called SYKES. And I'm going to do a costume change here eventually, but I also have my SYKES wear, just to show you that I've collected clothing from all sorts of places I've worked. But so we ended up at SYKES, and we needed to tell a bigger story than just robots constantly all the time. And so opened aperture to look at what has somewhat become our tagline, which is we're looking at the future of work, life, and culture. And the other cool thing is when I joined SYKES, I came to Tampa where our headquarters is, and someone showed me the 29th floor. And the 29th floor is where Jim used to hang out when we went to the office. Remember offices and commutes and parking. So on the 29th floor was this kick-ass studio. It was so cool. I was a kid in candy store from having been filming myself with my iPhone to walking into a room where Jim and some of his colleagues had lights and cameras and action and backgrounds and makeup. They put makeup on you to make you look better. And so we started to play with, okay, well, we got those resources, we got the story to tell, and we want to expand and talk about more than just robots. And so OneTAKE was born, and it was August of 2019. August 5th were our first few episodes. So I will stop there because I'll then go through sort of a memory lane of the episodes we did in a moment. But Jim, what did you think when we started first filming those first few episodes in the studio when we had all the structure? That was it went okay.
It was pretty complex, actually.
Yeah.
Just there were a couple where we actually had a couple of guests visit us. So we had, scheduling. I will say scheduling is always the most difficult thing. It seems like something that's simple, but scheduling is very difficult. So when we were in the studio, there was a lot of setup involved. It's not the biggest space, so you try to maximize what you have. And so yeah, it would take like typically a day just to get the studio set up. There's my cat saying hello. He's excited. And I kind of prefer the streaming now.
Yep. Well, and so that was, and
it's much more spontaneous.
Yeah, it's much more spontaneous. Now, so to Shay, when things were more sort of methodical and we had a lot more time, because we started OneTAKE where we decided we're going to do one episode a month. And
yeah, I remember that. Okay.
Yeah, and if anyone knows me, that was about 29 episodes too few per month. I just thought like we should be doing them hourly. But apparently I have a day job, which and other people do too. And you needed to schedule and all that stuff. But so back then it was a little easier to say, okay, that's going to be the guest this month. And then we sent out invites and things. When the new reality set in, we had a period where we did like 5 guests in a week. Do you remember that? This was like one of the first weeks of virtual where we just, I guess I lost my mind and we had a guest like every single day. We've slowed down a bit back to sort of a more reasonable amount. But Shay, you're responsible for keeping all of the machinery working and not flying off the rails as it relates to getting people prepared, coordinated. So I imagine it was a little different from the very first days to now.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. We have way more structure today, which is great to see. That's why this is a big celebration. We didn't have any structure at all, actually. You said, yeah, I want to push out every single day. And I was like, wait, I was like, Ian, we don't even have guests yet to push out every day. He's like, it's okay, let's do it. I'm like, yeah. All right, well, but we definitely learned a lot. And I do miss the days of the studio too. Although I'm based in Massachusetts, I did get to travel to the studio a couple of times and we got to see the makeup and the behind the scenes things. But then once OneTAKE Live came to light. You just took off and ran with it, and it seems like you're going to continue doing this even if we do get to use the studio again. So
oh yeah, now if we go back to structure, I think it will break me, because I really like this sort of, I mean, heck, we've all had to adapt to home, but so let's talk about this. So I'll do a few one take by the numbers things, and then jump off from there. So I'll start with the name, and I'll pretend like someone asked this question. So great question, listener, who just put a question in the chat. So people put questions in the chat. If they're really embarrassing, I'll ignore them. But other than that, I might actually answer them. There's no bad questions. But the name OneTAKE came because it meant two things to me. One was I was going to have one guest, and we've sort of stuck to that equation. We've had a few shows where we've had two guests, like this show. Look, two guests. And so you had their one person's perspective on whatever field they were in. And we'll talk about all the different topics we covered later. But so their perspective on the areas that they had either written books, or they were specialists, or they started companies, or they taught classes, et cetera. The other one, which was more of a production note to myself and to others, was we're going to do this thing in one take. There's not going to be a stop and try that again, or that didn't go smoothly. We're just going to let her rip and go and talk, and hopefully something coherent comes out the end of it. Partly because back when the idea struck me and we were leaner, I didn't have the patience or the team or the time to do any sort of post-production. So I wanted to just get it done the first time, put it live. I'm thrilled that we have stuck to that equation. We do it in one take. There is no post-production editing, except for cleaning up the sort of intro. And I'm sure all sorts of cleaning up I'm not aware of, but I'll pretend like it doesn't happen. Thanks, Jim and Shay. But no, I mean, the shows are usually 45, 50 minutes long. They're fluid, comfortable discussions with my guests. For me, at least, I can speak for myself. Hopefully they feel the same and they don't all think it was torture. But it was just a discussion we get in one take. So that's one. There are other numbers. Of the 50 shows, with this one included, 3 of the shows, the first 3 shows, happened at a conference. We actually just filmed people I grabbed while in a conference in Florida back in August. And I've got a bit of an origin story on my very first guest. Ooh, look, we've got visuals. Oh, that is exciting. So okay, so that prompts me to go explain it. So because I was an RPA guy, because it seemed to be the only thing I was always talking about. Remember, robots. There we go. Mirror image on this is very hard for me to know which way I'm pointing. So robots. And because RPA had been good to me, my dream always was I wanted to do this show, but I wouldn't start it until I had one individual as my first guest. He had to be the first guest. He had to kick the whole thing off just because of his role in helping name a space and helping craft and educate and champion the robotic process automation space. And that individual is Pat Geary. Pat was the chief marketing officer of Blue Prism, which is one of the leading RPA firms. And I'd known Pat for a while. Pat was a great friend and partner. And so I knew that I wanted my first episode of OneTAKE to be with Pat. And so I tracked him down at a conference and sat and chatted with him. And to this day, if anyone's interested in some of the backstory and history of the RPA industry, that's a good episode to listen to, just because he speaks to sort of the making of the origin story of a naming concept and framework and positioning of automation. So that was my first guest. And then AJ Hanna and Brian Bergen were also at the event and were kind enough to let me grab them and shove them into a couch and a chair, respectively. AJ it plays 2 different roles in my number game. AJ not only was my second guest, he's also one of the 2 guests that's been on the show 2 times. So thank you, AJ, for being one of my most prolific guests, or just being patient and nice to me that you keep coming on. My other guest that's been on more than once is David Brain. And David was my co-founder and colleague at Symphony Ventures, and is at SYKES with me now. And is now the Chief Digital Officer and head of SYKES Digital Services. So that's why he came on most recently, just to talk about that. So anyway, and then Brian Bergen. Brian's an industry investment analyst who has been covering the RPA space for years and years, and is absolutely outstanding and awesome and smart, and knows all the financial complexities that my brain can barely grasp. But he writes all about the space and was at the conference as well. So those first three were at a conference. Then we did 5 shows in that studio on the 29th floor of the headquarters of SYKES in Tampa, Florida. We did 1 show on what I'm calling on-site. We were at a delivery center that SYKES has in Morristown, Tennessee, Kentucky, Tennessee. It's going to be embarrassing. Someone can correct me in the chat if it's someplace else. But anyway, so we work with Intuit at this delivery center in Morristown, and their visionary, one of the key individuals in the Intuit team was there. We were celebrating the partnership and the collaboration, but more importantly, we were celebrating this concept of a prosperity hub. The prosperity hubs are where work goes to add high degrees of impact to the community that receives and is doing the work, the jobs that it creates. And so Balakarthik Venkataramanan was the individual from Intuit, and he joined me on site to talk about his history and then about prosperity hubs. That's an awesome one to watch if you guys want to learn more about sustainable outsourcing or responsible outsourcing, impact sourcing, prosperity hubs, all of those topics, which are so relevant today. And in fact, the IAOP just did a webinar with us about that very topic. So that was the 1 show on site. And then 41 of the shows have been done at home because we were all sent home. And they were done here either in Tampa or I was renting a different house somewhere else for a little while, but we did all of those shows from home. And so that's what Jim and Shay were referring to, is we went full virtual, went away from lots of lights and cameras and action and makeup to a webcam, which constantly focuses on where I am and screws it up. This microphone, my laptop, my iPad, where I'm seeing people comment and share and let me know that they're here with us. So thank you, keep that coming. And then Jim and Shay and a cast of other characters who were by my side and made it possible to schedule these and to host them. So Jim, pivot back to you for a sec. So we're going live. We're going live over a few different channels, and we played with a few different mechanisms to go live. Walk us through that journey, because I think a lot of people are early and new to this craft, and we've learned a lot along the way.
Yeah, initially, since LinkedIn doesn't really support streaming within their platform, you have to go through a third-party application to do it. The first one we tried out, super powerful, probably a lot more than we needed at the time. So it's kind of overcomplicated things. So then we switched to a different one. That was really buggy. Had some cool stuff that it did, but very inconsistent. Now we're very happy with the platform we're on right now. And they're constantly making upgrades. And so far it's been pretty smooth.
Yeah, it's this is not an advertisement. They're not paying us. Perhaps they should. This would be cool if we get like sponsors. But we use StreamYard now because actually, Sarah Grace, you ask a great question in the feed, which is she wants to hear from us our thoughts regarding the pros and cons of being a live show. And the con of being a live show is if there are bugs, you're not only rude to your guest, but you're rude to all of the guests who joined you, all the attendees to the live stream, and then you just sort of like. then your body temperature goes up and you're sweaty and you're all nervous. And so it's like live theater, I suppose. It's visceral, it's in the moment, and you've got to just got to keep going. The show must continue to go on. But
it's also authentic too.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. For instance, we didn't plan a cat, but we got ourselves a cat. And my dad was barking in the
other cat who normally sleeps all day.
All the time. Yeah, exactly. It's just like triggered. It's like, now I've got to say something. So we have a bottom third in which we name the cat, and we can just sort of involve the cat into the show. Yes, I mean, that's it. It's more genuine because it has to be, because it's just effectively, and that's kind of the idea was, Katrina wants to see the cat, Jim. If you can pick up the cat. There we go.
There's Willis.
There it is. Hey, Willis. How you doing, buddy? That's very cool. Willis is big.
Willis is a big cat.
This show was supposed to be about me, Jim, and now it's about your cat.
Yeah, cats are great for SEO.
Good point. That's actually, it's funny because Jay Ludgrove from GL Pro UK, who is a team that we work with, who helps us a lot in the content, he too has a cat, and his cat does feature in some of his live streams. So we can do like a cat to cat. This is basically the internet getting back to the sort of the core nature of what it was about anyway. Right? Just live streaming of cats. I will happily just give up my LinkedIn Live ability and just have cats join my feed, and I think we can sort of pinpoint the beginning of the end. I think it just happened right then, just exactly. Exactly. That was the jump the cat moment that I think we'll all remember to this day. So let's see. So the technology, but yes, live makes you have to. I was equated to sort of like drive time radio, where remember when we used to drive and listen to radio, and you used to listen to. There was a show in Maryland where I grew up, WAVA, and I would listen to them for hours, just talk about whatever the hell. I mean, it's just garbage. They just talk about like the food they ate last night or the funny thing that happened to them, and people would listen to that stuff for hours. It's just engaging. I suppose I have guests that have accomplished great things and have great points of view and insights. So I do less sort of total banter and more interview style. But hey, that could all change. Maybe we just randomly banter from now on OneTAKE. Okay, so let's get back to numbers for a second. So we had three at a conference, 5 in a studio, 1 on site, 41 at home. Of the guests in this show, yeah, you people tuning in, thank you. But the guests is also what makes this show happen. And they have been just awesome with their time. And, the very first few, actually all of them, all of the guests have been really charitable to even come on this show and spend their time with me. So again, 50 shows, we've had a few shows that have had multiple guests. Of the shows, 48 of the guests were men. 11 of the guests were women. That is a dynamic that I'm working on leveling a little bit more. And one of the guests, actually, I guess was sort of a man, but he was a puppet man. So one of the guests was a puppet. There he is, right there. I am not necessarily working on rectifying the ratio of puppet to human. So I think I'm fine with one of my guests being puppet, although he's welcome to come back on the show anytime he wants. And then we started to chase different thematic areas. Right, we started with RPA a lot, to the point where Shay and others just told me to stop doing so much RPA. You were very sweet and somewhat subtle about that. But it was all I knew. It was who my Rolodex was. It was my friends. But then we started to pivot from there. And we actually had probably one of the first pivots was Dr. Mary Key. And a great episode in which she shared her research in a book that she'd written about, man, this is awesome, Jim. You're pulling up all this footage. Like, this is incredible. We should do this more often. Every show from now on is just going to be like a mashup memory show. But so Dr. Key talked about women in leadership. development and nurturing of talent for us to see more women in leadership. And again, one of the reasons that I aspire to have a more balanced audience. And for everybody listening, by the way, and this goes for all topics, but if there are any other guests that you think we should have on the show, let us know. Absolutely, let us know, because we, like I said, we've got 5,050 to go, and we need more guests, and we do have some really good ones coming up. So we talked about sort of the future of work, and a lot of that was RPA oriented, but some of it was around skills. Future of work also then took a sort of opened up to talk about the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what the future of work would look like. And so Mary Key was great because she got us kickstarted on that topic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shay, what did you just there? So what are you thinking?
No, I agree. Mary Key's episode is where we started to open up the OneTAKE vault of all the different topics, and just, entrepreneurship, women in leadership, customer experience, all of that, customer service.
Yep. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And then we did, so actually we had our first attempt at several different things. Our first attempt at dialing in a guest. We actually did 2 attempts at this, and the second one was a colossal failure. Remember, we actually had to reschedule one of the guests because we just couldn't get the remote feed working. Mm-hmm. But the first time we did it was with so we had one of the individuals from SYKES who's a close colleague of mine, works very closely with us, and is an absolute expert on change management. So we decided, because RPA, we talk about it all the time, but one of my assertions was, the tool is a very small percentage of the overall transformation equation. It's also all of the fundamentals. It's change management, communication, stakeholder management, et cetera. And so we had Tim Creasy and Russ Katzman join. And so Russ is from the SYKES team. Tim Creasy is from ProSci and the ADCAR change management process. And had a thrilling discussion about, and I mean that sincerely, which I know sounded sarcastic. As I was saying that sounded sarcastic, but it wasn't. A thrilling discussion about change management and how enterprises need to embrace it and learn it and really emphasize it. Otherwise, everything else is for naught. So that was a 2-person show. The only other 2-person show, I think, Jim, was David and Victor. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Before this show.
Yeah.
And so that was more recent, where David Brain and Victor Von Ball joined and talked about digital transformation and talked about the launch of SYKES Digital Services and what their backgrounds are and our collective point of view towards what enterprises need to do to transform. Other categories were, and so I mentioned there were several different colleagues of mine at SYKES who've been very patient with me. AJ and David Brain and Victor I've named already. John Kruper came on the show, and we talked a lot about training, the future of training and skill development, which is imperative in this future of work environment where we have to learn new things to stay relevant and to stay employed. Sarah Grace McCandless graced the show, no pun intended. And then Sarah Grace talked about brand love, and then went on to, and I'm really excited about this, went on to get her own show under the SYKES production banner. So we now have OneTAKE and On Brand. And On Brand is Sarah Grace's show. If you haven't seen that, you absolutely should check that out too, because a completely different topic area with a completely awesome and dynamic host speaking to lots of really relevant guests in that. And Sarah Grace has got a few shows up and live already with many, many more to come, which is cool. Who else? Jim Farnsworth shout out to Jim Farney. Jim's a work-at-home expert. And so we talked, this was right at the very beginning of us all finding ourselves at home, and did a lot of discussion around what the work-at-home dynamic is, from his rich experience at building teams who were remote from the very beginning, because they had so many lessons they could share with us as we all became remote in many cases for the first time ever. And Orlando Haynes was the other SYKES employee, SYKES team member who joined. And Orlando's specialty is talent acquisition and HR and recruiting, and so we talked about that. So thank you, AJ, David, John, Sarah Grace, Jim, Russ, Orlando, and Victor for being not only my colleagues but my victims on OneTAKE Live. Yeah. Who is your favorite of those, Jim? No, just kidding. That's an unfair.
The ones you just mentioned?
Yes, the ones I just mentioned. Let's see who's on. AJ's on. So AJ, actually Sarah Grace is on too. So they're both my favorite. And everyone else is dead to me. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, lots of people on. That's cool. Okay, so then the other categories were, and I have a visual for this. Let's see if I can figure out the mirror image of the camera. Ready? Nope, damn it, got it wrong. Right there. So 50-50, and I went that way. That bookshelf right there is books that were written by guests on the show. So one of my greatest joys in preparing for the show was actually reading again. I seemed to work myself into a intensely short attention span category, where if it wasn't a CNN headline update or a Facebook meme, I couldn't get through it. And then I invited guests on the show who had worked their tails off to put real, thoughtful dissertations together, and I owed it to them to actually read the things. So I've perfected the art of speed reading and gleaning from the work of my guests what it is that they're working on, so that I can hopefully have interesting discussions with them for the sake of the audience who joins. Thank you to all of my guests who have books. It makes it a hell of a lot easier to interview you when you have a book. So that's everyone from Tron de Undheim wrote an awesome book about sort of the scenarios that could be coming post-COVID, which is also insane because he wrote a book in like 7 weeks. Really, you just resent people who could focus and get that much work done. It's good to resent your guests if you're doing a live stream interview show. I think it's always important to. No, that is not true. Tony Saldana was on the show recently. Tony wrote a book on why digital transformations fail, which was really cool because we've all spent too much time talking about this magical thing that is digital transformation. And he sort of straight up said, look, this is not going so well for many people, and here's why. Luke Williams was like riding a bucking bronco because the guy's so flippin' smart that it was very difficult to keep up with his smarts. But he talked all about customer loyalty and customer experience. His book is The Wallet Allocation Rule. I grabbed the wrong one. That's what happens when you turn your head before you grab a book. Wallet Allocation Rule. Mary Lassity was on the show, and Mary Lassity has written several books. This is one about BPO. She's written several on RPA, and then most recently several on blockchain. And that was awesome because Mary's been a friend for a long time and is one of the movers, shakers, and definers of the RPA space, like Pat Geary was. I can keep going down the list, but Alex Edmonds actually wrote a book about shareholder value, and I have it on, unfortunately it's not on the shelf because I got it on Kindle. This goes to show me not to buy something on Kindle because it makes a terrible visual after the fact. But he was a professor of mine at business school, so that was cool to have him on the show and switch the dynamic. I asked him the questions, which he got all right. So, which is different than when I was asked questions in business school. Mary Key, I already mentioned. Colin Shaw, who is an absolute guru on customer experience. He wrote a lot of books, several of which we referred to and talked about as we were talking about his insane depth of knowledge on customer experience and experience design. And I'll leave it with 3 other authors. One of them was Peter High. Peter has been a friend of mine for 20 years or even longer, is an absolute expert on digital transformation and has not only written books on it, but also is a LinkedIn Learning author. And so he's got classes on LinkedIn Learning. And so it was a real thrill to have him on because I want to be him when I grow up. He's written a bunch of books, and I also have some classes on LinkedIn Learning now, but his are better. So you should check those out. Heather McGowan and Charlene Lee, also 2 authors, also memory serves, both LinkedIn Learning authors, about disruption and transformation. Those were, honestly, let's see, disruption mindset, and maybe I just put it down. I have to find the other one. But so Charlene Lee, Disruption Mindset, is one of the best books you could pick up this year if you are looking for a book to read over the holiday season while you quarantine at home away from your relatives, surrounded by your loud cat. But that's an awesome book. And I need to find where Heather McGowan's book is.
Heather McGowan's book was The Adaptation Advantage.
That was nice. I wasn't thinking ahead of that. So yes, so those are 2 awesome books, tremendously awesome books, along with all the others that I named. Look at this. Tron wrote a book in like 7 weeks. It's insane, and it's got all these pages, and there are words on every one of them. And they're good words too. So I'm impressed. So I've had 13 authors on the show, several of whom also are LinkedIn Learning authors. And then I've had experts from their own fields in their enterprises. And so there were, and many times these experts were in customer experience and in customer experience design and development. So Jeriel Thornburg May was talking about crafting customer experiences. Shep Hyken, man, that guy's a star. He talked about customer service magic. There's a solid customer experience theme here now, because just it's the point of why we're doing all this stuff. Right? We're not redesigning processes just to have a nicer process. We're not putting robots in because we like robots or robot clip art or machines. I'm really gonna figure out that mirror image thing. Michelle Beretta also talked about learning from your customer, the power of. Luke Williams, same thing, science behind great customer experience. And who else? Laurent Pierre talked about the same culture, customers, and we talked about COVID. All of the shows we're talking about COVID these days because it's still around. And so thank you to every one of those guests for coming in and enlightening me with just an absolute wealth of career experience in creating awesome customer experiences. So Shay and Jim, what's been the biggest struggle or challenge? Got to find a better word for that. But like, as we put these things together and as we try to coordinate, what are we going to do next? What's the continuous improvement of OneTAKE Alive? Shay first.
Well, I hope that LinkedIn can make the necessary updates to make it smoother sailing for us. I.e. notifying people when we're live. That's my biggest thing that I would hope they have this new feature now that says remind me, that I feel is very useful. So for everybody tuning in, make sure you share and let everybody know that you can now click a remind me button. Yeah. Every time we schedule a new episode, it's there. And that's the best we can do right now. But that would definitely help to get more people to see that we're live streaming.
Yep. No, and that's sort of interesting. The live stream mechanics, we've certainly, it's been evolving. And as you said, it's a whole lot better than it was when we started. And it made it impossible for us to let anyone know. In fact, that was the feedback I get a lot. And people would just say, like, if you follow me on LinkedIn, then you get an indication on your phone or your watch or something else, which makes me intensely annoying and always there. But there was no heads up. It would just sort of happen unless you saw the announcement we put in LinkedIn or on Twitter or something. So that's getting better. I definitely agree. That's getting better. We're able to schedule it more so more people can attend. It's still very difficult to find the show once it's gone live. We do host it on a website after the fact, which is a different place for it to live. But the show as one of the assets in your catalog on your profile still is a little hard to find.
Yeah, you can go to recent activity for anybody that is unclear. Yeah. And then you have to go to post. That's an easier way to find it.
Yep.
But hopefully they just make it super easy and it's just right there, live stream. Right.
Well, because it should be like a YouTube library where you can just collate and collect and even create. What I'd love to do and what I think we will do soon is create playlists, because we're speaking to enough people in different thematic areas, in RPA or customer experience or future of work. And it would be neat if we could just do that in the LinkedIn machinery as well. Jim, you struggle with all the live stream platforms and things. But we seem to have licked that one. We figured that one out a little bit better. What else would you like us to do to further hone the craft?
I mean, just kind of keep pushing things visually as much as we can. Your hands are definitely kind of tied, just depending on what the platform will allow.
This is what I look like, Jim. So.
And then we're going to have you a retainer for somebody to do permanent hair and makeup. So
good.
By twice a week.
Honestly, I love the sound of permanent hair since mine seems to be going away. So if we can get a retainer for permanent hair, that's a great idea. The other something that we're playing with and haven't done yet is even more of an on the road run and gun kind of a model where we can take this out to different delivery centers when that is allowed again, so that we can do more of that show with Bala from Intuit in our Morristown Center was one of my favorite shows, just because it was there. It was on site. It was visceral and real, even more so than just sort of the realness of going live stream.
That was kind of part of the original plan. You wanted the spontaneity when you were traveling a lot. I know you did a LinkedIn post from the airport in the Philippines, and
who does?
It would be great to be able to do more like that.
Yeah,
I look forward to that.
It does take you a little while to just get over. Man, I don't know that I ever do. You're just sort of still always self-conscious as you're just holding your own phone up and filming yourself talking, and you just see past the phone, everyone looking at you, going like,
"Who's this guy?
What is he doing?" So, and they're right. They are absolutely correct. But I'm still doing those videos. But yeah, I lost one of my main production studios when airports closed. And so we'll take a few more questions, and I could go on. Maybe we do this. We just do these bantering shows from now on. So have to relate. Sarah Grace, thank you for equating this show to Beverly Hills 90210, creating spin-offs like Melrose Place. Because in this scenario, Sarah Grace's show on brand is Melrose Place, and mine is 90210. Fun fact: Darren Green, I think was his name, was the writer producer of 90210. He went to my high school and was my high school graduation speaker, because we probably couldn't have gotten another person. So, and literally all the girls were like screamed. They were so excited that we had him there talking about 90210. It was when 90210, when 90 was huge. The first time around, not the second time around. Mr. Reichman asks if I could give advice, or if we could give advice to ourselves 50 episodes ago, from what we know now, what would we say? And I think all the things we just said. I think the one thing, and this is, people who are experts in this craft, and so this is like Jay Ludgrove says this a lot, and other people who are specialists in this. Connor Dubé was a guest on the show too. He's very much about brand building and marketing and promotion of your story and yourself. Just do it. You're gonna suck when you get started, and that's the only way to get better is to start. And so I think I think I would tell myself, do more, be less self-conscious about the way they come out, and just keep producing, study, iterate, evolve, all the little bits that we have today. I mean, this setup in front of me, the notes I have, just the way that we invite guests, the way that we inform them and let them know what the steps are that are coming, the way that we post-produce after the fact, the way that we push out to not only just the live stream platforms now, but over Stitcher and Podbean and iTunes and Spotify and YouTube. That all took shape over the course of a year. And I'm sure there's 1,000 other ways that we want to evolve and iterate, but don't let perfect get in the way of getting a show started, would be my primary lesson to myself. Shay, what else would you share with us 50 episodes ago?
I would say, hold on for the ride, hold tight, because it's going to be great, and we're going to make it to 50 episodes and celebrate. That's what I would say. I definitely learned a lot, just with all the different formats and platforms, and we're definitely way further than we were, and we know much more as a host, as a team, and the back end. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'm excited to see where we will continue to go.
So Shay, I'm sorry we didn't leave more time for this, but share with the audience too your personal experience, because you also have quite a bit of experience with social and branding and posting, but for a very different reason. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What else do you do that makes you such an invaluable expert in this craft?
Well, in my other life, I do have a double life. I am a independent musician and mentor, community advocate. And so I have to constantly put myself in the forefront so that the audience can know who I am and that they can connect with my story. So that's why I really enjoyed episodes like Brand Management in the Time of Crisis with Sarah Grace, and Working at Home with Jim Farnsworth, and also the Mary Key episode, because I take advice from wherever I can, and those are things that I apply to my personal life as well. So I do have an alter ego, and those are some of the things that I have to do. So I try to take those same practices and apply them to the OneTAKE show. Awesome.
Matt Sullivan has put red shades in the comments. I think there's an E in there, but yes. So Shay is an outstanding hip hop artist and famous, not only globally but in the Boston area where she hails from. And oh, look, Katrina is helping you out too. Nice. Everybody who's still listening, click on those links right now. If there's nothing else you do all day, you have to go listen to Shay and her music. So thank you, Shay. Jim, are you also a hip hop artist in your free time?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Well, that's the end of that question.
You know what?
I hope Ian likes my 4-word answers.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm not.
Free time. So,
Ian, I do want to highlight one thing before we end the show is we definitely have a OneTAKE super fan that I definitely want to make sure. And while we appreciate all the fans, because we have like a really good crowd that consistently comes and tunes in, but this person definitely has to be highlighted for just being an all-around OneTAKE super fan.
And I do agree. And for those who are not familiar, Jim Mcleod has been probably on. There are very few people who've been on as many shows. I don't actually think, ironically, I don't think he's on today's show. So we're going to have to send this to him after the fact. But I think he'll enjoy that. Jim is the chairman of the board of SYKES. So he's my boss's boss. And so it's very nice that that he likes what we're doing, but he's also been, as you said, an absolute advocate and fan and supporter, and sees the value of what we're doing. Not only for me to indulge in having fun discussions with awesome experts, but it's also a good branding and marketing and messaging vehicle for the organization. So thank you, Shay, very much thank you, Jim and Shay, for creating that cool graphic and then for putting it up. I think I mean, I could just keep going, and I honestly, there could be a show about a show, because we've learned so much about structuring the message, about just the production of this stuff, about how to make the content relevant and keep it useful well after the live show. And like I said, we're just getting started. We will get, I promise, I aspire to get better and better for all those who so consistently listen. And if you do want to see other topics covered or other guests hosted, let us know. There are all sorts of different ways you can get in touch with us, from LinkedIn and email and all the other formats of communication these days. So let us know who else we should have on the show, who you'd love to see us interact with, what other, as I said, what other sort of topics do we think are going to become really critical to all of our lives going forward as we examine the future of work, life, and culture on OneTAKE and on OneTAKE Live, which I hope we continue to do this live. I hope we do one show a day from now on, Jim and Shay, just like the original plan, and then we'll move to twice a day.
Every hour, Ian.
Every hour. Brilliant.
5 minutes notice on his
5 minutes notice. That's good. Okay. This is going to be great. There's no way that this plan can fail. It's just constant live streaming. We won't even end the feed, Jim. We'll just leave it going, and just new guests will sort of wander in, and they'll just so that's it. 50th episode of OneTAKE. Thank you everyone so much for listening, for supporting us along the way. Please do have a really good Dewey Decimal System Day. I know you've all got big plans for that, like organizing things in a meticulous manner. And before we go, we do have a bit of a graphic and a visual as well, because while Jim and Shay have done just a tremendous amount to make the show possible, there is a large cast of characters that contribute in all sorts of ways, in helping book guests, and helping to post content, and helping to write all of the post-show content, helping highlight all the different topics that we've discussed, post-production, editing, etc. So thank you to the cast of characters in the OneTAKE family and the SYKES production family, because that same team is working with Sarah Grace McCandless and AJ Hanna and others to put out their content over channels as well. Let's, I guess before we roll that and close the show, also, I wish you all a safe and happy and healthy holidays. 2020 continues to be a dumpster fire, and continues to get worse. Just spectacular statistics around how bad it is out there. So please stay safe. 2021, I look forward to the chance to start to interact as the social animals that we instinctively are again, and get back together. Do OneTAKEs on the road and live and on site with folks, because darn it, that's what we all want. So stay safe, stay healthy, have a happy holiday season, happy Hanukkah to all those who celebrate tonight. And with that, Jim and Shay, thank you so much, and let's roll the thanks and the credits.
All right, thank you. Take care, everybody.
Have a good one.